In today's Palworld stacking guide, I'll show you the best methods for stacking base items, including storage, crafting stations, and utilities. We'll test how each item stacks, discover the maximum stacking range that your pal can still interact with, and learn how to design efficient bases to save space and boost productivity. Before learning how to stack items, it's important to understand the basics of how stacking functions in the game. When stacking, you must place all your support structures first. These supports will hold up the items you want to stack. Once your supports are in place, you actually build from the top down. This means you start at the highest point and work downwards. Almost any placeable object can act as a support. However, avoid using foundations, roofs, or pillars as supports. If these are destroyed, anything above them will collapse. To perfectly align stacked items in Palworld, you need something tall that allows you to snap your structures to. A great option is the new flag added in the Tides of Terraria update, as this can be placed down anywhere without having a snapping point like a pillar. If you're a lower level, you can use simpler items like the locker. By placing one of these objects and holding alignment mode, you can snap your stacked items directly to it, ensuring they line up evenly. If you hit the height limit, you can keep stacking higher by placing a smaller item next to your build and snapping the same structure against each other, repeating this process to climb higher and maintain perfect alignment. Now that you understand how stacking works, the next step is to finding the best items to use. The ideal choice depends on what you're trying to stack, but your main goal is to always have the same: make the stack as tight as possible with minimum gaps. If you try stack plantations using a fireplace as the support, you'll end up with a large gap between each plantation. This wastes space and looks uneven. Instead, use benches as the support. Benches create a much smaller gap, allowing plantations to stack closer together and more efficiently. When it comes to organizing your base, one of the most important items to stack is chests. For this guide, I'll be focusing on two main types: the reinforced metal chests and the advanced chests, which are considered endgame storage. We won't be covering the earlier chests, since stacking is something you'll mainly want to focus on once you're deeper into the game, when space efficiency becomes more essential and stronger storage options are available. When stacking refined metal chests, the best support to use is the locker, since it's the exact same size as the chest, making it the perfect fit for neat alignment. Advanced chests, on the other hand, are even easier to stack. They can be placed directly on top of each other without needing any support, making them the simplest and most space-efficient storage option. For transporting items, the best pal in the game is Phalaris, which, after testing, can stack items all the way up to the base height limit. If your world has the structure deterioration rate set to 0, you can stack chests as high as you want, and the pal will still be able to store away items without issue. When I tested this myself, I couldn't stop laughing at just how broken the transporting mechanic actually is in this game. Moving on to breeding pens, these are a large structure that take up a 4x5 area of space. At first, I tried using smaller containers or orange lockers as support, but they weren't tall enough, so instead you'll want to use the large containers. Set them up in a 3x7 layout, which provides just enough room to place a breeding pen on top. To get perfect alignment, start by placing a wall at the end of your foundations in the center and snap your first container to it. Then continue aligning containers until you've placed a 3x7 layout. At the opposite end, build walls upwards so you can climb onto them and easily place your breeding pens. You only need to align to the left and right side, since the pens can't be pushed further forward. As an important note, when placing down breeding pens, make sure you're always facing the same way. Looking at the compass at the top can really help. You can use an extra container if you prefer, but lining it up perfectly is a little trickier. Once the breeding pen is placed, remove the containers underneath to free up some space, allowing you to stack more breeding pens below. A useful tip here is to keep a handling pal in your party. You'll need to summon it to help you build containers when stacking higher up. Since the maximum number of pals you can have in a single base is 50, if you change your settings, you'll need 25 breeding pens to make full use of that limit. To test this, I stacked containers 24 levels high and was still able to interact with the monitoring stand to assign pals to every single one of the 25 pens. To confirm everything worked, I waited until all the pals laid a bunch of eggs. Collecting them is easier with a flying pal, since you can just hover around and grab them. Just remember that you'll also need to place cakes into each breeding pen, so having ladders nearby makes this process much easier. For players who can't change their world settings, the maximum number of breeding pens you'll want is 7, as it's best to always keep a Braloha inside your base to speed up egg production. Ranches work almost the same way as breeding pens, but since each ranch takes up a 3x3 area, you'll want to place your containers in a 2x5 layout to support them. Each ranch can hold up to 4 pals, so for a 50 pal base you'll need to stack 13 ranches, while a 15 pal base only requires 4 ranches. Instead of climbing onto walls to place the ranches, you'll want to use Japanese-style chests as platform. This gives your ranches the perfect reach for placement, but make sure you rotate the chests. Again, you'll only need to move left and right to get the perfect placement, but remember to look in the same direction so the ranches don't rotate or misplace. Once a ranch is placed, remove a layer of containers underneath, which will allow you to keep placing ranches. Keep doing this until all the ranches are placed. As a pro tip, if you have a friend, they can remove the containers for you, allowing you to just climb down placing ranches. Now it's time to test furnaces. For this, I'll be using the gigantic furnace, which allows up to 4 pals to work on at once. To stack furnaces, place down 2 lockers side by side, rotated long ways, and build them too high. Any lower and the furnace won't fit. If you're building against a wall, make sure the lockers are centered for proper alignment, or you won't be able to snap the furnaces into place. Since it takes 4 lockers in total to support one furnace, a 50 pal base will need 13 furnaces, which means placing 48 lockers. For a 15 pal base, you'll only need 4 furnaces, requiring 12 lockers in total. What's interesting is that even when stacked high into the sky, pals like Incinerum can still interact with the furnaces at the very top, as long as they have a clear path. If their pathing is blocked, however, they won't be able to reach or use them. As for you, the player, the easiest way to access stacked furnaces is to jump onto a flying pal, which still allows you to interact with every furnace in the stack. For cooking, we'll be using the large-scale stone oven. To stack them as close together as possible, you'll need 4 benches for each oven. Make sure they are centered and properly rotated, especially if you're building against a wall and using it as a snapping point. Since each oven can be worked on by 4 pals, a 50 pal base will require 13 ovens, which comes out to be 48 benches in total. While stacking, if you ever find that the benches won't stack into place, just climb higher up. This usually fixes the problem. Even when stacked way up in the sky, pals like Incineram can still interact with the oven, and as for you, the player, you can still access them by hopping onto a flying pal. Now we're moving on to my favourite things to stack, plantations. For large plantations like wheat, start by placing a bench aligned with your wall, then rotate it and snap 2 more benches to the first one. This creates just enough room to place a large plantation on top. To stack plantations side by side, snap 2 rotated benches against the side of the plantation, making sure they're centered. For smaller plantations like berries, you only need a single bench to support them. Since plantations only require 1 layer of benches per structure, you can stack them as high as you want with no height limits. Personally, I like to stand on the benches, jump into the air and snap new benches into place before landing. It makes building much faster. Even when stacked extremely high, plantations will still be fully usable and your transporting pals will always be able to deposit items from production sites, so I won't repeat that detail every time. For skill through orchards, things work a little different. These are large plantations and they require 9 layers of benches to stack properly and 2 benches per layer. Finally, whenever you're working with a production structure that has an interface for the player to open, don't forget to tick the deposit box if you want your transporting pals to automatically transport items. As a pro tip when stacking high, plantations sometimes won't snap into place. To fix this, place your plantation first and snap a locker or flag to it. Next, remove the plantation and stack your benches as you normally would. If the plantation doesn't fit correctly later, hold alignment mode and face the flag. This will make the plantation snap perfectly into place. Even though some pals are nocturnal and don't need to sleep at night, it's still important to provide pal beds in your base. Without them, pals can suffer from negative effects, so beds are always required. The good news is you can use any type of pal bed you prefer. When stacking beds, use walls or pillars to keep everything perfectly aligned. For large pal beds, you'll need 4 benches per bed, 2 benches side by side, stacked too high. For a 50 pal base, this comes out to be 196 benches, while a 15 pal base you will need 56 benches. You'll know they're working properly when you see the marker indicating the bed is registered inside the base, even when stacked at maximum height. For small pal beds, you only need 2 benches stacked vertically to support each one. That means 98 benches for a 50 pal base and 28 benches for a 15 pal base. The fastest way to stack benches is to stand on top of them, jump, and place while holding alignment mode. Keep in mind you may need to rotate the bench to get it to snap correctly. If you find you can't place them anymore, try adding more walls or pillars to extend the snapping distance. Production lines can be stacked either sideways against a wall or directly in front of one, but the method changes depending on the size of the structure. When stacking production lines sideways with the Advanced Survey Assembly Line, Advanced Workshop and Advanced Weapon Assembly Line, begin by placing 4 fireplaces side by side rotated for proper alignment. Once the alignment is set, you can remove the first 3 fireplaces as they are no longer needed. While in alignment mode and facing the wall, rotate the structures so they fit neatly on top of the remaining fireplace with the robotic arms facing forwards. Our disassembly conveyors require a little bit more space, so you'll need to place 5 rotated fireplaces side by side and then bring a 6th fireplace one step forward. You can remove the first 5 fireplaces, leaving just enough support to keep the conveyor in place. The gold coin assembly line is smaller and only requires 3 rotated fireplaces to stack correctly. To stack higher, snap flags to the fireplace, then snap more fireplaces to the flags going straight up. If you don't have access to this flag, then you can use lockers instead. When production sites are placed with the wall directly behind them, you only need a single rotated fireplace to stack them up, making this the simplest and most space efficient option. Even when stacked far above the ground, all production lines remain fully functional, and you can interact with them without issue as you can just use your flying pal. If you wanted, you can also use ladders, but make sure they're placed in the middle of the production lines to have access. With all these production lines running, you'll need plenty of electricity, which means stacking large power generators. To place them as close as possible, start by building wooden bar stools extended 5 out from the wall. The first 3 stools can be removed afterwards since they aren't needed for support. Stack the stools 8 high, which provides just enough room to fit a large power generator. When using flags as snapping points, always rotate the flag so it's closest to the item you're stacking. The best option for this is the Rances Syndicate Standard flag unlocked at level 63, as it makes alignment much easier. Even when placed at extreme heights, the generators will still function and provide power without issues. For energy storage, you can always use the accumulators, which require 5 benches per unit. While stacking more accumulators increases storage capacity, I prefer relying on the power generators instead. They don't only hold far more electricity, but also allow your pals to constantly refill them, keeping your power supply topped up at 100% without interruptions. Expedition sites are limited to just 1 per base, but the good news is they don't need to be placed on the ground. You can easily position them in the air by first building a few pillars with a floor on top, then placing a locker on the floor as support. From there, you can place the expedition site onto the locker. Look left or right to align it properly. Once the site is placed, simply remove the locker and the expedition site will remain floating in the air. Mining sites all have different height limits, with the tallest being the ore mining site 2. The other sites, wood, stone, coal, sulfur, and pure quartz, share the same height and only require 2 earthened pipes stacked on top of each other to support them. All mining site 2s are a bit larger and need 4 pipes in total. You can unlock earthened pipes at level 38 through the outdoor furniture set, making them an essential tool for stacking. Even when placed at extreme heights, mining pals are still able to interact with the sites without issue. If you're wondering how to control which mining sites your pals work on, you can assign them directly through the monitoring stand. If left to roam freely, however, they'll mine at random, automatically moving on to the next site once one is full. Oil extractors can't be stacked like most other structures, but you can place 2 on a single oil vein with the right setup. To do this, face either southeast or northwest and align the bottom of the extractor with the base of the oil vein. Slowly slide the extractor left or right until it turns red, then carefully move in the opposite direction until it snaps back to blue. At this point, you can either rotate the extractor to face your preferred direction or place it down immediately. Once the first extractor is down, move on to the opposite side of the vein where you should be able to place the second extractor right away. When stacking hot springs, you'll notice that using alignment mode causes the structure to shift slightly to the left. To work around this, start by placing benches 3 down and then 2 to the left. Once the final bench is placed, the others can be removed since they're no longer needed. For this bench, stack lockers or flags upwards to create a snapping point, then begin stacking benches on top. Each hot spring requires 3 bench layers for proper placement. After finishing your supports, remove the flags or lockers, equip the hot springs, face the wall with alignment mode activated and snap into place. This method often leaves a noticeable gap between the hot springs and the wall. To close that gap, place a hot spring first, then snap a flag directly to it, making sure it's centered and rotated as close as possible. Add 2 more flags to the right, remove the first 2, then snap a bench to the last flag. Rotate the benches and connect 2 more benches to it, removing the extras afterwards. From there, you can stack lockers or flags against the bench to build upwards and repeat the process, rotating the hot springs if needed for perfect placement. If you're using lockers instead of flags, follow the same process but don't rotate the lockers. For Japanese-styled hot springs, the process is slightly different since they don't leave a large gap against the wall. Place 2 benches straight down from the wall, then 3 more to the left, making sure they're all vertical. Remove the first 4 benches since they aren't required. This leaves you with just enough support to snap the hot spring on top, again requiring 3 bench layers per hot spring. To align properly when placing the Japanese style hot spring, first start by equipping a flag and looking at the stairs. You'll notice there's 4 different snapping points. Place the flag in the center on the right side, making sure it's rotated so it sits as close to the hot spring as possible. From here, snap 2 more flags to the right of the first one, then repeat the same bench process as before. This time, however, add an extra bench to the right side since that bench will act as the main support. Remove the unnecessary benches, then use the flag or locker trick to stack your support benches as high as needed. Once everything is in place, hold alignment mode while facing the flag and the hot spring should snap perfectly on top. If you're using lockers instead of flags, the setup is slightly different. Place the first locker perfectly centered with the stairs and add 2 more lockers to the right. Do the same method as earlier, but this time we don't need the extra bench at the end for the support. From there, simply repeat the same bench stacking process until you've placed down as many benches as you need. Now you'll be able to perfectly align Japanese style hot springs on top of the benches when aligning them with the lockers. Keep in mind that hot springs can't pass beyond the base's blue boundary line since pals need to remain inside the base to use them. I tested this by placing one just below the line and pals were still able to teleport inside and interact with it. Despite what some players claim, pals don't get stuck inside hot springs, they simply work while standing inside and teleport out whenever they need food. That said, stacking them excessively is unnecessary. On a 50 pal base, you'll only ever need around 6 hot springs, since pals rarely use them and the chances of more than 1 pal needing it at the same time are very low. Fishing ponds are a little trickier to stack compared to other structures, since pals need to be able to walk directly to the pond in order to use them. You can manually assign pals, but that quickly becomes tedious, so I've designed 2 different stacking methods to give you flexibility depending on your base layout. The first design uses a spiral stairway to build upwards. Start by placing a stairpiece, followed by a roof, then add another roof to the left to support your next stairpiece. The extra roof can be removed afterwards. Each time you place a roof, add 2 more at either end, then connect them with another roof. Using a different structure type here makes the layout easier to follow. Once your spiral is set, face the right side and place your fishing pond as far forward and as far to the right as possible. After placing the pond, remove the unnecessary roof pieces. In many cases, this leaves just enough space to place another fishing pond on the opposite roof. By repeating this process, you can keep building higher and higher. The reason this works is because fishing ponds only need their stairs supported in order to be placed, which allows for creative stacking without requiring full foundation space. The second design is much taller but uses far less horizontal space, making it perfect for placing along the outskirts of your base. To start, place down 2 stairs going upwards, followed by a roof. From there, extend 4 more roofs to the right, then add 2 more leading back towards the starting point. This creates the framework to support another 2 stairs. Once those stairs are placed, remove the floor directly beneath them as it's no longer needed. At each end of the structure, add 2 more roofs to create platforms where the fishing ponds will sit. Place each fishing pond as far back as you possibly can while the side of the stairs just clears the main stairway section. Repeat this for both sides. After the ponds are set, you can remove one of the end floors on each end since they won't be necessary anymore. For the center fishing pond, place a floor directly between the 2 already existing ponds. This provides just enough space to fit the pond in the middle, but be sure to place it on the newly added floor. If it's set too far back, pals won't be able to path to it. Once everything is aligned, you can repeat the process to continue stacking upwards and as high as you need. Now let's move over to my all-in-one base, which is designed for maximum efficiency. When setting up structures inside a base, you want to keep all your work suitability skills grouped together. For example, I keep all my mining sites in one area, plantations in another, and so on. Since pals automatically deposit food into the feed box, it makes sense to position the feed box close to the plantations. Because they'll also deliver cooked food to the same feed box, it's best to keep your kindling stations nearby as well. My mining sites are also placed close to the feed box since that's where the majority of my pals tend to be working. Grouping things in this way greatly reduces transporting time and keeps the workflow smooth. If you'd like to build this same all-in-one base layout for yourself, I've included a step-by-step guide in the description. And that's everything you need to know about stacking and setting up the most efficient base in Palworld. With these layouts, you can save space, cut down on transporting times, and keep your pals working at peak efficiency. If you found this guide helpful, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your own base building tricks. I'd love to hear what works for you. And if you're looking for more Palworld tips, you can click here to check out my Palworld playlist, which is also in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.